Okay, well, let's get started. Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Tonight we'll be covering the Analects, Book 5. We'll start with Chapter 10 and 11. Type exclamation point in the chat if you'd like to read your version of the Analects. I would ask maybe respectfully request Penny or James, since you've traditionally been so kind to read.
Go ahead, Penny. I prefer her reading anyway.
Okay. So Book 5, Chapter 10 and 11. The master said, I have not seen a firm and unbending man. Someone replied, there is Shan Chang. Chang, said the master, is under the influence of his passions.
Are we doing the right thing? I'm sorry.
Am I in the wrong one?
I think we are on Book 5, Chapter 10.
Yeah.
She read what is number 11 in
So this is this is actually an issue.
Oh, okay.
No, this is
The two section.
Yeah.
Sometimes they come back. I think the one I have is so-called standard.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Okay.
Sorry.
Why don't we have
I mean, that's what this one shows.
maybe we I can start to reintroduce this too, since this is but maybe as an approach here, we could actually have Jason, you share your version first, and then we read the two.
well, she can just subtract one, Joseph.
Okay, is that it? Is it only subtracting one?
That's all it matters. That's all it matters. That she can subtract
Because
one
I thought one was
from 10. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, the ordering is
Should I
not
start
bad.
the one before about sleeping?
Yes, you
yes,
should do
yes.
You should do the
Okay.
sleeping one. Sleeping one. Start from the sleeping one.
Yes.
Okay.
Should we start again since that was kind of
That's fine.
complete chaos? So that we can okay, welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Tonight is the Analects. We'll be covering Book 5, chapters 10 and 11 to start. Penny, could you go ahead and read chapter 10 and 11?
Okay. Saw you being asleep during the daytime, the master said, rotten wood cannot be carved. A wall of dirty earth will not receive the trowel. This you, what is the use of my reproving him? The master said, at first, my way with men was to hear their words and give them credit for their conduct. Now my way is to hear their words and look at their conduct. It is from you that I have learned to make this change. Should I read the following verse too?
Please.
Okay. The master said, I have not seen a firm and unbending man. Someone replied, there is Shan Chang. Chang, said the master, is under the influence of his passions. How can he be pronounced firm and unbending?
Thank you, Penny. Would anybody else like to read their version of the Analects? If not, we can go to Jason's translation.
Do we not have the leggy version, James?
That was the one we just heard, Emma.
Yeah.
I can read the DC Lao real quick if we like.
Please,
Please.
if you'd be so kind.
All right. Book 5, verse 10. Zayu was in bed in the daytime. The master said, a piece of rotten wood cannot be carved, nor can a wall of dried dung be troweled. As far as you is concerned, what is the use of condemning him? The master added, I used to take on trust a man's deeds after having listened to his words. Now, having listened to a man's words, I go on to observe his deeds. It was on account of you that I have changed in this respect. Book 5, verse 11. The master said, I have never met anyone who is truly unbending. Someone said, what about Shen Chang? The master said, Chang is full of desires. How can he be unbending?
Really well read. So thank you, Aman.
Okay, that's my turn. I think. A little bit different. Okay, so chapter 10. 宰予, okay, and he also show up in as a 宰我, that's the same person. If you remember before when the Lord asked him about, the prince asked him about the material, how does the temple of the earth built for the different dynasty, and he has the answer with different wood in different dynasty. And the Confucius said, you know, you don't have to say that the things already passed. You don't have to regret if the thing already done. You know, this kind of thing. That's a kind of negative comment on him. So this one is the same person, and sometimes called 宰予, sometimes called 宰我, and in this chapter called 宰我. That's the typical translation called 宰予 slept during the daytime. The master said, the rotten wood cannot be carved. The dirty wood cannot be painted. Why bother scolding you? Okay. So the master said again, it used to be this way. I listened to what people said and believed them to act accordingly. Now I listen to what people say and watch how they act. Because of you, I have changed. Here, I see the Professor Eno, okay, and he's retired, okay. He think, okay, and I see confirmed with some Chinese scholar also look at this way. If you look at these two Chinese words, okay, this word and this word, you can see how similar it is, right? And this word, the second word, only have one straight line here compared to this one. So a belief is this word been mistaken because the writing for a long time is missing. So actually, if we use this word, okay, that means painted. So actually, could be 宰我 is not sleeping during the daytime. He was painting his bedroom, okay, instead of sleeping during the daytime. So if you think, okay, Confucius' complaint is too harsh just for students sleep daytime, and you totally, you know, if you see your student or your kid sleep in the daytime, I don't think I think it's too harsh to say it's like you are just like a rotten wood, I cannot carve. You're just like a dirty wall, I cannot paint it, right? I think it's a little bit too harsh because you just sleep in the daytime. So I think, okay, and some very few scholars agree on this one. It could be mistaken, the words mistake. Could be 宰予 is painting, was painting in the bedroom, okay, which is unnecessary work according to that time. So Confucius saw it. He said, the rotten wood cannot be carved. The dirty wood cannot be painted. He is talking about 宰我 or 宰予 doing something unnecessary, which the dirty wood you don't have to paint. Okay, so I don't have to complain on this. Then he talked about his general comment on that. I used to listen to people and trust what they are doing. He's talking about 宰我 talk a lot. Okay, right now he see 宰我 also act something unnecessary. So if you think in this way, 宰我 is a person kind of like today's ADHD people. He also famously questioned Confucius a lot of time. For when Confucius said, you have known your parents for 3 years. And 宰我 say, oh, is 3 years too long or not? Okay. When Confucius say you should always pursue 仁, the benevolence, And Zaiwo said, well, if the benevolence in the well, okay, he means in the dangerous, are you going to jump into the well? So Zaiwo is kind of a student like ask a lot of questions, say something unnecessary. Right now, Confucius see him do something unnecessary. And that's another way to look at it. But unfortunately, for 2,000 years, Zaiwo or Zaiyu has been famous for sleeping in the daytime. So the second interpretation is not being taken seriously. But I do think just for sleeping in the daytime, you don't consider this person is a rotten wood or dirty a wall, which is hopeless. So that's the thing. And the question would be, which story you believe, right? Chapter 11, the master said, I have never seen anyone who is upright. So this word called gang, it's a very difficult word to translate. And the Confucius talked about this for, I think 3-4 times. And right now, I kind of think this word could be equivalent to Greek cardinal virtue, bravery, or the proper translation is fortitude, right? So you will have some strength to resist something or control something. So I think the firm and the unbending also makes sense. Okay. So master said, I have never seen anyone who is upright. Okay. So I have never seen anyone who is something. You will see many times in Analects, because that's the way Confucius talk about some virtue. He always say, I have never seen someone doing something. That means that's a high virtue. Okay. So Confucius said, I have never seen anyone who is upright. And somebody, probably his student, say Shen Zhang. And Shen Zhang is one of Confucius' disciples. And we don't know much about him. So, but, you know, and the Confucius said, Shen Zhang, okay, is full of desire. How can he be upright? So that means in Confucius' view, be it gang or fortitude or upright, you should not have a full of desire. In this sense, I feel, you know, this word gang or upright is compatible with Greek concept of fortitude, okay, because you do control your desire. So, so you can be considered as fortitude or gang in the general. And in later part, Confucius also talk about this word, gang or upright, is one of the 4 key factor to be to approach Ren, which is the highest good. Okay, so yeah, thank you. That's it.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting when it comes down to the translations, the distinction between doing something unnecessary or sleeping. I don't know which one I'd rather actually be accused of doing, but Aman, would you like to comment on both of these, on 10 or 11?
Yeah, I want to thank Jason. That is a really cogent explanation of the disagreement that exists still within scholarship. And it boils down to, did somebody have a careless brush stroke or not? And that is actually how the transmission of text over time can occur. You can get very small errors, and especially with the Chinese language, it can compound to change the entire meaning, not just of a given word, but of an entire sentence or the context which is being used. As far as that story goes about Zaiyu or Zaiwo, if we remember that the Analects is trying to teach the same lessons, and it's just doing it in many different ways. And we go all the way back to book 1, verse 6. This is when Confucius said, a young man should be shao at home. He should be prudent and trustworthy. He should care for people and get close to people of Ren. After doing this, if he has any energy to spare, he should study. That is very telling to me about my interpretation of why Zaiwa catches such hell from Confucius for this, because this is more than just him calling him, a wall of dung or rotten wood. This is Confucius changing his opinion on humankind because of the actions of Zaiwa. Zaiwa did something so untenable to him that from that day forward, Confucius would not take people at their word. He would watch how they behave. And when you think about that passage about how a man should be shao at home, trustworthy, upright, if anything's left, then you study. If Zaiwa wasn't using the chance to study, and this regardless of whether he's painting or he's sleeping, either way, he is burning daylight that he could be using to greater ends. And this was just anathema. This was a bridge too far for Confucius to accept. I have to wonder how long it took before Zaiwa was ever in anything resembling his good graces after this show of abject, poor decision-making on his part, whether it was napping or painting. And as far as verse 11 goes, as Jason was saying, this word gang is a challenging word to translate. And I like Jason's decision to use upright. Fortitude is another good one. Integrity could be another good way to put it. It is comprised of two elements, rigid and knife. Those are the two components that make up the word gang. And it really speaks to someone who is exacting, useful, precise, all of these qualities that I think fit the description that kind of come with the term upright. So I think these are excellent. I appreciate having the editorial retained there, and I'll be excited to hear everyone else's thoughts.
Yeah, I will be as well. I would be interested if anybody has anything to offer, if they have, and this question is for Jason and Aman as well. Just how Confucius viewed passions overall. I would be interested in knowing, in the sense that were they something as seen as a negative, that, obviously the Greeks look at it as something that takes you out of your rational nature. So Aman, do you want to comment?
I was going to let James comment first.
Okay, James, go ahead, please.
The only thing I was going to say was, to me, this question is related to sensuous objectivity. And it, in other words, and it reminds me of Buddhism a little bit. This idea of you're either really upright, and now, yeah. So that, I mean, that part sort of like that gets me to question. Like upright means basically following virtue, but I see it as this question of whether you're centered rationally, and in my translation, it's firm and unbending.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the question is this kind of person going to be full of desire and passionate, too passionate? Is he going to be kind of like what this idea of being locked in the sensuous, or falling for attachment to material things, not just attachment you know, the attachment to material things, but also this idea of, yeah, desire, sneaking in the back door. So is he going to be upright or not, you know? And that requires a kind of a rational mind. It
Yes.
requires that you don't just consider your sensuous objects, but you also keep just center on your consistency and rationality in your conduct. So that's the way I see those two expressions kind of combining a little bit. Maybe I'm leaking one into the other, but it is about the number 11 is definitely about the conduct of the person in terms of being desirous, passionate, sensuously objective rather than rational in his firm and upright and unbending in his conduct.
Yes, I very much agree with that. You know, firm and unbending is, you know, you're talking about somebody that's consistent under all circumstances. So that requires that you do have something that where you're in control of your emotions, even in difficult situations. And I'm curious to know, Aman, then Jason, that you know, if this is very similar to what the Greeks, you know, basically thought about as far as emotion, even though this was obviously much earlier. Anyway, just some thoughts. Aman.
I would say there's some similarities, and this is strictly speaking an opinion because I can't point directly to the Analects where Confucius says, here are my thoughts on the passions or desires or a person being too full of it. This is one indictment of one person's character as being far too full of desire to be considered dong or upright. And it's interesting because somebody points to this individual as the upright person, and Confucius' retort is he's far too full of desire to be upright. These things kind of speak to the presentation of character much as they do whatever internal workings are happening in Shangchan, whatever it was that his internal machinations were. These are two people talking about how he appears to them. And that is something Confucius is highly, highly aware of. There's a point later in the Analects, and right now it escapes me exactly where, but something to the effect of someone will ask Confucius, has he made any great mistake? And he responds by saying he went to the call of a woman once, that a duchess or someone of power called to have him come visit her, and he acquiesced to that call. But there's no clear indication that this is anything other than possibly a job interview, but he felt it was improprietous for him to do so. And so this idea that saving face and having a presentation that is above reproach is really important to him. In that sense, this and the Greek virtue ethics, as they are bestowed upon you outside in, they hold a lot of similarities, I would say.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Jason, then Allison, I believe. Hang on, let me just make sure I have that order correctly. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. I think the word, okay, in the Chinese word they call yu. Okay. The words it's a little bit strange because during that time, this word is with, let me show the screen just a little bit. Okay, so when I do the translation, I also noticed this word. It's a little challenging, this word. Okay, this word actually in the bottom, if you a little bit invest, okay, it's a two part, right? This on top is yu, and they have a heart on the bottom. Okay, if you know Chinese, you probably would know what they mean. So this word only used once in Analect, but it could be the person, later person, add this word. That means this word, so even it's yu, it's different than the other yu. Okay, because in Confucius talk about when he is reached 70 years old, he can yu, which is desire anything he wants and never cross the border. So so here he could be this yu could be means passion, okay, not just desire or I want. So it also match with Confucius' other teaching. He talked about when people are young, your qi, okay, your qi is very gang, okay, very upright. So you have to avoid, okay, something too much, okay, okay. So in this way, I think it's passion, okay, could be mean. So Shen Zhang, this person could be very young, so he's upright, and when he see something wrong, he probably want to fight for it, okay. And the people say he's upright, and Confucius no, he has too much passion. To just probably, I just assume it's young people, so probably too much passion, okay, can act, uncontrolling, okay. So in this reason, Confucius said he is not upright yet. And in another session, Confucius also said, if you are righteous, but you don't do eager to learn, okay, so that means something to self-correct, you will go, he used the word uncontrolled, 狂, or you want to call it crazy, okay. So gang is the right thing, but you should have some control on that. That's Confucius version. If you want to compare to emotion, I don't see that emotion. Based on my understanding, emotion is something if you got angry, you want to shout it. If you got sad, you are going to cry. That's my understanding of emotion. I don't see Confucius talk much about this, but in the later time, in the Confucius' grandson, okay, that's one school of Confucius, okay, school. Confucius' grandson, the famous writing called the Doctrine of the Mean, right? So he is talking about you have emotion, okay, you should let it go, but stop in some way. So that means when you, for example, Chris Ross, right? Somebody slapped him, okay, he doesn't turn his cheek like what actually he did. But somebody slapped you, then you should be angry, right? You should just like chicken out or just say, oh, right, or turn your cheek. You should be angry, but to the point that you stop. Let people know I'm angry. And then you stop, okay? That's the right point. But that's not necessarily Confucius teaching. But this kind of emotion teaching has been written in the Doctrine of the Mean, which is about 100 years later by the Confucius. I think it's Confucius' grandson, Zhi. Okay, he's writing this one. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Jason. Allison.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot more sense with this, because one thing that I was thinking, well, I have to confess, I took a nap today. So as I was reading this, I'm like, I guess I'm a,
You just painted the house.
But what I was thinking with this idea of excessive desires or excessive passions is that actually they're useful when they're channeled correctly. Like if you have, like, you shouldn't choose a job, a career that you don't like. If you choose the one that you have the most passion for, you're going to be the most devoted to it. And you're not going to be napping all the way all day long, because you're going to be so into it that you're going to want to work really hard at it. And the same thing that if you're choosing a partner that you have a lot of passion for, you're going to want to stay with them even when life hands you difficult moments. You're going to still be so devoted to them. And then, I think that a long-lasting, marriage over decades creates stability in a society. So when passion is channeled in the right way, it's actually really useful. But that's different from flying off the handle in road rage or whatever. That's passion that's just, not contained. But I don't know. Those are just some thoughts that I thought about as I was reading this. But I'm not sure.
Thank you for that, Allison. Yeah, I'd agree with you. I mean, passions that are where your passions are actually dictating your actions versus your actual rational thought is actually where you're channeling the energy. You're in control. Once you lose control, I think that's a little bit different. But yes, being firm and unbending means to me that you're somewhat in control of your emotions under very difficult or under all circumstances. Anyway, are there any other comments about number 10 or 11? If not, we can move to chapters 12, 13, 14, and 15.
Before we read this one, I just like pay attention on this 4 chapter. They all talking about the person, the disciple Zigong, who is eloquent, good in the literature. Okay, beautiful talking, and interrupt with one person called Zilu. Okay, he's opposite to Zigong. So just pay attention on this.
Okay. Thank you for that. Penny or James?
Should I read it? All right.
Sure.
You want the next 2 verses?
Actually, no, it would be 12, 13, 14, and 15.
Don't forget to subtract one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the tough spot right there. So
Well, I'll just start at the next verse, right? Su King said, "What I do not wish men to do to me, I also wish not to do to men." The master said, "Su, you have not attained to that." Su Kang said, "The master's personal displays of his principles and ordinary descriptions of them may be heard. His discourses about man's nature and the way of heaven cannot be heard." When Sulu heard anything, if he had not yet succeeded in carrying it into practice, he was only afraid lest he should hear something else. Sukung asked, saying, "On what ground did Chung Wan get that title of Wan?" The master said, "He was of an active nature and yet fond of learning, and he was not ashamed to ask and learn of his inferiors. On these grounds, he has been styled Wan." Do I do one more?
no, that should be 15. Technically, that was
Okay.
that was 14. So that should be 15 by
Okay.
everyone else's standards. Mon.
Little slow at the keyboard, but so we are starting with Book 5, verse 12. Zigong said, "Well, I do not wish others to impose on me. I also wish not to impose on others." The master said, "Zu, that is quite beyond you." Verse 13. Zigong said, "One can get to hear about the master's accomplishments, but one cannot get to hear his views on human nature and the way of heaven. Verse 14. Before he could put into practice something he had heard, the only thing Zulu feared was that he should be told something further. Verse 15. Zigong asked, why was Kong Wen Zu called Wen? The master said, he was quick and eager to learn. He was not ashamed to seek the advice of those who were beneath him in station. That is why he was called Wen.
Thank you very much, Amon.
Okay. So I will share my version. Chapter 12. Zigong said, what I do not wish others to do to me, I do not wish to do to others. The master said, Si. Si is Zigong's personal name. So the master will call him Si. Si, you have not yet reached this level. Okay, so the question would be, what does Confucius mean, right? You haven't reached this one, or just said you have no way to reach this level? Okay, so that's the question, right? I would think Confucius tried to encourage him not talk too much, should do more. Okay, that's why Confucius said that's not yet you reach this level. You should do more things, not just talk about this. And these words, what do I do wish others to do to me, I do not wish to do to others. This is repeat in later chapter. I put in the 15, book 15. Confucius also told Zigong the same thing. And when Zigong asked about the words forgiveness, Su, okay, what's the meaning of Zigong asked Confucius, does there have one word I can use for my lifetime? Confucius say Su, which means forgiveness or give pardon to other people. And then Confucius explained what I do not wish others to do to me, and then I do not wish to do to others, the same word. So it could be this one happened later, okay, when Confucius told Zigong about this, and Zigong said it again, and he learned, but he didn't do it. That's why Confucius said that you have not yet do this yet. Okay, so that's the this section. Chapter 13, Zigong again. Zigong said, it's not a conversation, he just talked about Confucius, praise Confucius. Zigong said, that's a difficult word, 文章, okay? And then when Amon read the D.C. Lao's translation, he called accomplishment, right? Accomplishment. It makes sense, you know, and some translation may call it literature or writing. I kind of not agree because in the later part in book 8, he talked about the ancient sage Yao has a 文章. I just don't think he's talking about the ancient sage's writing or literature. He's talking about his accomplishment. But I think that the proper, another translation I like to use is ritualistic words, okay, some verbal, some display about rituals. So here is talking about something you can learn by observing, and something you have to learn by heart. That means something it's not learnable by observing or by teaching. You have learned by your feeling. Okay, so that's my understanding. So Zigong said, our master's ritualistic words and acts can be learned from observing, but our master's statement on human nature and on heaven's Dao, okay, 天道, cannot be learned from observing. So Confucius is expert on rituals. So this one, about rituals and how to behave, how to speak, you can learn, by following Confucius. But Confucius also have another level of about human nature, about heaven's Tao, this kind of thing. Also excellent, but you cannot just learn from him. You have to, I don't know how, but basic. It's not that easy to learn. So after to Zigong, we bring another person called Zilu. I'm not sure it's the first time we have Zilu here, but Zilu is a much older student. He's just 9 years younger than Confucius. And Confucius always say, oh, we show Zilu. Zilu is the one last week. Confucius said, I'm going to travel overseas. I'm going to immigrate to America, something like this. And Zilu said, hey, I go with you. And Confucius said, no, we have to find the number to make a boat, something like this. So, so that's the Zilu. Zilu is a doer. Okay, he actually sacrificed his life during the coup. Okay, so when Zilu heard a teaching and had not yet put it into practice, he was worried he might hear another new teaching. So Zilu is really a doer. When he learns something, he wants to do it. It's not in Confucius, but it's in Mencius. Mencius talking about Zilu. He heard, somebody complain about him. He was happy because he has something to correct. So he's happy. He's this kind of person. But this word is from Mencius. That's Mencius' comment about Zilu. Number 15. Zigong as Confucius. Okay, so one thing need to explain is so-called posthumous title. Okay, posthumous. That's a traditional royal family, or they call when the person die, usually an aristocrat. Okay, or emperor. When you die, and your successor will give you a name, usually a single word, to conclude your lifetime achievement. So most of Chinese don't believe God. Okay, so but how can they behave virtual, or because they concerned about this name? Because if you don't remember that the Duke Ai of Du, Ai means mourn. Okay, he didn't do well. Okay, so died sadly. Okay, I think being killed during the coup or something. So it's not good. So he got the posthumous name, posthumous title, I. But here he talking about another aristocrat, Kong Wenzi. Okay, Zi is his royal ranking, and Wen is his title. And Wen is a very good word. Okay, only high achievement can have the posthumous title, Wen. So Zigong asked Confucius this question, very practical question, right? He heard they give the posthumous name to this person, Kong Wenzi, okay, call it name, Wen. So he asked, why is Kong Wenzi called Wen as his posthumous title? Confucius said, he is smart or quick, okay, and eager to learn, and not embarrassed to ask questions to his inferiors. Okay, this is the reason he has the title of Wen. Important thing is he talk about him is eager to learn, or desire to learn, happy to learn. Okay, we see this word many times, and so in Chinese called 好学. In the entire Confucius Analects, only 3 persons qualify as 好学 or eager to learn. Okay, Kong Wenzi is the one. Okay, another one is Yan Hui. Okay, that's Confucius' best student. Another one is Confucius himself. Okay, not only these 3 persons Confucius considered as eager to learn. And I think eager to learn doesn't mean, in Confucius, doesn't mean you are eager to acquire more knowledge. We will see this one later, but I think he meant eager to learn means you are eager to correct yourself, to improve yourself. That's Confucius' meaning of eager to learn. Unlike today, when we say somebody eager to learn, or in Chinese, 好学, means he always study hard and try to read more book, acquire more knowledge. I don't think Confucius means this. Confucius means you are eager to improve yourself. I think that's what he meant. Yeah, thank you.
So the idea in this particular instance is actually has more of a moral component to it than, or virtue component to it. That's the goal of learning, as opposed to understanding the natural world.
Understand, I think he means, because it's compared with, there's one famous chapter Confucius is talking about, for example, the gang fortitude, or firm and unbending. Confucius said, if you just have gang or firm and unbending without eager to learn, okay, you will go, you use the word 狂, okay, or you say crazy, or you will go too much. So eager to learn is very important to compete, to go with any virtue. Because you have any virtue, okay, then you need to have to go with eager to learn. Otherwise, this virtue will go beyond or go to the wrong way. So it's kind of thing to self-correction, self-improve. That's he meant, eager to learn. I think we will see this one later, and probably in this chapter and next chapter, and we will do it. And then that's what he meant, eager to learn.
Thank you very much. He was very humble too to include himself in those three. So, a lot of humility there. Aman.
I think Jason's translations are absolutely great, as typical, but especially because of his treatment of when, which I just threw into the chat, the breakdown of how that character's components come together. You can see that there's the idea of lid and govern. And colloquially, when is used very often to indicate language, but it also can then be transformed into culture or a literary system. And so these ideas are intimately linked in the Chinese mind with this one character. In fact, anytime you have something to ask, you stand up and say, 对不起, Lao Tzu, Xing Wen, excuse me, teacher, please let me ask. And Wen stands in place there for asking, learning, gaining more culture. So I find it great that in Jason's translation, not only do you get the conversation about Wenzi's earning the posthumous name Wen, but also before then, his choice in verse 13 to use the term ritualistic words seems like a really good way of embodying both the cultural aspect, the li or ritualistic aspect, and that these accomplish something. They're meant to an ends. I really appreciate that. The other thing I wanted to mention briefly. Oh, go ahead.
Is that that would be number 12 for us that you were just referring to, correct? I was just
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, yes, if you're one behind, it would be number 12.
I just wanted to make sure.
And in number 11 for you, but number 12 standard, when he says, what I do not wish others to do to me, I don't wish to do to others. Jason's right. This is mentioned twice in the Analects, and this is sometimes referred to as Confucius's silver rule. as opposed to the golden rule, do unto others, which is a positive affirmation or a positive sort of call to action. This is a refraining from harmful action, which is why it's sometimes referred to as silver as opposed to the golden rule. But it was there, 3,000 years ago. And I think he should get credit for at least, rough drafting the idea.
Yeah, actually, that's a very important rule to get credit for, since a lot of societies actually adopted it. Whether it was applied properly or not, we can talk about that. But yeah, no, that was something that I had noted as well. It's very much similar to the golden rule. Jason, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just like to share my screen one more time. If you Confucius had a definition, okay, in the chapter in book 1. Okay, so let me show this one. In the book 1, all right. So Confucius verses 14, he has a definition of this word, eager to learn. Okay, so that's the at that time probably we don't pay much attention on that. Okay, so I mean read it again. A 君子 does not seek food to fill his body, nor comfort in his residence. He is apt in action and prudent in speech. He accompanies those who act by the Tao and rectifies himself. Okay, rectify himself. 就有道而正焉. Okay, that means rectified. Okay, this is called eager to learn. I don't think anything mentioned about acquiring knowledge is all talking about virtue and correct yourself. So that's his definition of 好学 or eager to learn.
Thank you for that. All right, everyone. Go ahead and type exclamation point in the chat to share your takeaways from chapters 12, 13, 14, and 15. First up, we have James.
Thank you. Yeah, the last one, 15. I guess this idea of when is really important to me. To me, it means he has the capacity to employ community, intellect, and knowledge. It's completely free of elitism. The team player, the manager that depends on her team to not to carry her, but to employ a community of knowledge and expertise to accomplish the goal. So so I like that one the best. I hate to pick favorites all the time, but that's the one that kind of moved me.
Yes, number 15 was very interesting for me as well. Yes, kind of learning for learning's sake, and no matter what environment you're actually in. Does anybody else have a comment for any of these chapters, 12, 13, 14, or 15? I'll give it a couple more minutes. I do want to come back maybe just really briefly, and I keep mixing these up because I actually went and renumbered them with number, I imagine it's number 12. The master personal disciplines of his principles and ordinary descriptions of them may be heard. His discourses about man's nature and the way heaven cannot be heard. What does he mean by man's nature?
Let me answer. He talked about he used the word 性, okay, which would be very common use in mentions. 性 means man's nature, okay. He know people, okay. So what's human nature? And so he talked about human nature and the Tao of heaven. So these two things, it's difficult in the English translation. These two, the heaven, the Tao of heaven. That's one thing, right? So Confucius said he know the way of heaven when he reached 50 years old. You need some experience to know the Tao of heaven. He need to know people. That's called 性, okay, human nature. That's the thing. Confucius is expert on that. It's never be heard. I don't think that's a proper translation.
Okay.
In Chinese, called 可得而闻之. 不可得 means you can gain it, okay, and you can 闻 means you can observe or you can watch, right? You can heard. These words can be used as observing, hearding, heard or hear, okay? So that's hearing and observing. That means something, his words, his accomplishment about rituals, you can hear, you can watch, and you learn. But his talent, that's called talent, on human nature and heaven's nature, you cannot just hear and watch, then learn. You have to learn by, I don't know, probably by your heart, by your
Right.
talent. I don't know, but that's he
By example or something like that.
I don't think it's by example, because when he talk about rituals, right? Confucius rituals, ritualistic words, that's an example, words and act, because Confucius do it this way. You can learn. For example, you see Confucius, how does Confucius talk to the prince? How does Confucius react to many things? That's the thing you can learn by example or by Confucius teaching. But Confucius probably know, for example, when he see you, he know you are a bad guy, okay? And he know tomorrow is going to rain, okay? That's the heaven's way. And you cannot learn by example, right? Because there's no sign you can show, but you have to learn another way. So just like you are fortune teller, and then you have no way to show example to your disciple. Your disciple needs some gift or some special mystical way to learn. If I have put some example, probably like this.
Thank you for that, Jason. Any other comments for 12, 13, 14, or 15? Aman.
First, I wanted to give Penny the chance.
Oh, did she? Forgive me, Penny. I did not mean to skip you. You're muted. You're muted again.
I'm again, push my button. Now, I had a question on the one you were just talking about, the 13, because I couldn't quite decide if they were like in a way praising the master because, he had this innate ability to know about human nature in the way of heaven, or they were kind of criticizing him because he wasn't telling them, about it. Anyway, that was kind of my question. I wasn't quite sure how to interpret it.
I think you were for sure, right? That the disciple will not criticize your teacher according to Chinese tradition. So I don't see anyone to do that. I only see Aristotle criticize Plato. I don't see
That's
not a different tradition.
Oh, okay.
If it helps, Hegel criticized every philosopher.
Right, exactly. You were there Saturday night at the existentialist meetup, so
Yes, that was very interesting.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. He really did criticize every philosopher. That's one takeaway that I had. He took from every philosopher.
That's
but
right. Yeah.
He took from every philosopher, but he also had
Yeah.
discounted every philosopher. Aman.
It's a good thing I was muted. I was ranting about Hegel for a moment there.
Go there. Rightfully so, actually. Please, by all means.
But no, I think Penny asked the right question here. Is this maybe not a criticism because they wouldn't dare, but is this a complaint or is this a singing of his praises? And Jason's right. This idea of Xin is very, it's very much touted as Confucius's strong suit. It's what probably brings people around him is he is so good at understanding and knowing people. But it's not something that can be taught, not through a lesson, not through a single object. It's something that requires that lifetime of experience combined with refinement and honing of what you take in from those around you to be able to, like observing Zai was napping, reevaluate everything you believe about humankind based on, you know, the actions that are there in front of you, being able to extrapolate, in other words. But this issue of what is Xin, what is human nature, really erupted a couple of generations later in two of the most famous Confucian disciples, Shunzi and Mencius. No, the real argument being, are people good or are people evil? You know, are people is human nature a nature of people being good in character? And there you get the Mencius argument of people watching a child stumble towards a well. Everyone has that moment's panic. That's his justification. Everyone has a good nature. It may be corrupted. Shunzi basically actually worked in politics and said people are rotten to the core. They are all bad. They start off selfish. They continue that way. And the whole point of educating them is to kind of knock that out of them. This is a fundamental disagreement still about what is human nature. But it's funny, the Confucians both come to the same conclusion that regardless of what it is, the answer is more study, is more effort, more action, more discipline. So when you read Zhaigong describing the master's, you know, virtuosity with other human beings, being a virtuoso at people, it could be that he's saying you just can't get this by one lesson or one sit down or taking one of his classes or even spending a year with him. You need a good, you know, lifetime of experience under your belt. And at 50 years old, when our master knew the way of heaven, maybe if you put in 45 years of effort, you'll get it too.
Yeah, I was actually wondering that same thing because the first thing that came into my mind is like when I think of human nature, I always think of Han Fei and legalism is, you know, where he actually thinks nature.
Very much a subscriber to rotten to the core.
Yes, yes.
You can put it this way, Han Fei doesn't argue human nature is bad. He already assumed that's the given. Nothing about he never thinks
There was
about.
no debate.
It is no debate. And Xunzi is his teacher. Xunzi still argue, okay, and the human nature is bad, but we should correct them. But Han Fei is to the point. He already treat human as an animal. Okay, it's just reward and a punishment to control the people. So he's not talking about human nature at all. He's already assumed that's the human nature, and we have to do something there.
Well, he's a man of action, that's for sure.
He worked.
Unfortunately,
He united the China.
yeah. For better or worse, it worked. Actually, I think Madeline just sent me a chat that she wants to do the next translations. So you guys can take that. No, I'm just joking. So let me see here. We will, does anybody else have any other comments now? We will go to 16, 17, and 18.
Would you
Does
like me to read?
Penny, yeah, Penny, or
Okay,
if you go.
16. The master said of Sukchan that he had 4 of the characteristics of a superior man. In his conduct of himself, he was humble. In serving his superiors, he was respectful. In nourishing the people, he was kind. In ordering the people, he was just. Now, of course, is this 15 now?
Yes.
The master said, Young Ping knew well how to maintain friendly intercourse. The acquaintance might be long, but he showed the same respect as at first. Chapter 16. The master said, Cao Wan kept a large tortoise in a house. On the capitals of the pillars of which he had hills made, and with representations of duckweed on the small pillars above the beams supporting the rafters. Of what sort was his wisdom? Chapter 17. Su Chang asked, saying, the minister Suwan thrice took office.
I don't think we go that way, right?
Oh, okay.
We
Yeah,
go to 3, right?
Okay.
yeah.
Just
The
sorry.
next one was very long, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Very long, yeah.
Yes, 8, yeah. Do you want to start with that next week?
Yeah, sure. I think we can start from next week. Or we have the time, we can just do one section on that. That would be fine, you know.
Yeah, okay, actually, yeah, that might work out nicely. Aman, would you mind?
Not at all. I was just attempting to answer Mina in the chat there, but
Oh yeah, I was about to as well.
let's see. So book 5, chapter 16. The master said, oh, I'm reading the wrong one. My apologies. The master said of Zichan that he had the way of the gentleman on 4 counts. He was respectful in the manner he conducted himself. He was reverent in the service of his Lord. In caring for the common people, he was generous. And in employing their services, he was just. Verse 17, the master said, Yang Ping Chung excelled in friendship. Even after long acquaintance, he treated his friends with reverence.
And we need one more.
18. 8,
My apologies.
no problem.
The master said, when housing his great tortoise, Zhang Wan Chun had the capitals of the pillars carved in the shape of the hills and the raptor post painted in a duckweed design. What is one to think of his intelligence?
Thank you very much, Aman. Mina, do you have a question, a quick question?
Yes, I'm kind of lost. The version, I have a PDF file of the books.
Mhm.
So it's not standard. The numbers are not correct. So, yeah.
You are there, you might have to subtract one.
Did you see the turtle or turtles?
Yes.
I went
what-
up and down the numbers. This is book 5. Numbers is 5-16-17, correct?
It should be 15 or 16, 17, 18. But
Yeah,
so was your number 17 or 18? Did it have the large tortoise?
no, I don't have any of
Because
those.
that's the only one have a turtles. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
You mean
these
images or words? Images?
words.
No, I didn't see that. I would appreciate if somebody could post a PDF file for me that,
So we don't have the PDF. Jason, actually, can you share your Google Doc?
I'm going
I-
to, I'm going to, I'm going to post the address of the page on C-text,
Okay.
yeah, CTEX also work. Yeah,
because
CTEX,
that's not bad. Yeah.
yeah, it's not bad.
I also put in the DC Lao into the chat just now.
DC Lao is for free?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
let me,
Everything is for free, actually. Including my translation. That's all for free.
yeah, thank you. I have something here. Appreciate it.
And just for clarity's sake, because we've kind of had this off the rails a couple of times, the snarl here is that some translators take two of the verses and combine them into one. And when they do that, the numbering order changes. So everyone who is one chapter behind numerically, their translator opted to take two verses and make one out of them, whereas Jason and DC and many others can, and I think James Legge, no, Legge did actually do that. Most of the modern translators make it two separate verses.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'll look this up and keep your advice in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely recommend the DC Lao. Thank you very much, and thank you for your question. Jason.
Okay, so this 3 section, we Confucius, hold on, can you hear me? Oh yeah, okay. So this 3 section is Confucius talking about the historical political figure. Okay, first person he talking about is 子产. Okay, 子产. Okay, 子产is a prime minister of in the state of Zheng. Okay, state of Zheng. Okay, we talk about Zheng. Zheng is a corrupt state. Okay. During Confucius' time, and Zhi Can is a famous prime minister. So during his time, the state of Zheng is doing well, but he died when Confucius was 30 years old. So that's why Confucius comments on this person. So he said the master said of Zhi Can having 4 characteristics of the Tao of Junzi. Okay, so the exact words is talking about he is a Junzi, Zhi Can, and he has these 4 characteristics of the Tao of Junzi. So his way of private behaving was courteous. His way of serving superior was respectable. His way of taking care of people was beneficial. His way of directing people was righteous, or you mean fair. So the 4 words is very difficult. Gong, Jing, Hui, Yi. Okay, that's talk about his 4 characteristics. But basics, the first one I translate as courteous or whatever you want to translate. But basically talking about his private action and his way to treat his superior and his way to take care of his inferior. Basically talk about his people. and the way he directing people, okay, with righteous, with E, okay, or righteously. Number 17 is a person very famous, Yan Pingzong, or called Yan Ying, and he's the prime minister of Confucius' neighboring state. Confucius, like, there's a period of time Confucius want to work for the state of Qi. Confucius is from state of Lu. There's one period of time Confucius went to, when Confucius was young, Confucius went to the state of Qi to try to get a job. And Yan Pingzong, who like Confucius, but the other people probably don't reject Confucius. That's why Confucius are not hired, okay, in the state of Qi. Okay, so but that's his comment about the Yan Pingzong or Yan Ying. And he's famous about his wit, and he's very short. So one day he visits one state, probably state of Chu. So he visited them as the foreign diplomat. So people want to kind of insulting him because he's very short. So they specifically make a small door for him to enter. So when he look at the small door and he say, oh, if I go to a great country, I will enter from a great door. If I go to a humble or low-end country, I enter from a small door. So he decided to walk from the small door. So people kind of quickly change, ask him to go from the formal, the large door. So there's a lot of story about this person. So Confucius comment on him. He said, Yan Pingzong was good at interacting with people. He remains respectfully attentive after a long time. So I see a few translations talking about he translated as 善与人交 as making friend. For a long time, he still respect this friend. I think my understanding is based on the words. I think Confucius is talking about his attitude when you dealing with people. For example, if you talk to somebody and then after for 20 minutes, you got tired and you kind of lose your attitude. So I think that's the thing Confucius is talking about him. Talking about he is still keep his right attitude respectfully to the guest, even have a long conversation. Number 18, this one is about turtle, but in the Chinese word, there's no turtle. You talk about the word cai. Cai is a state, a small state, and then that state is famous to exporting large turtle. So when the ancient texts talk about cai, it means turtle because they supply the internationally source of turtle. And why large turtle is important? Because turtle can live long time. So it's very useful to the divination. You want to know the future, you want to know something good or bad, you'd better ask turtle. But I'm not sure how does they do it, probably through the I Ching or whatever, but basically turtle is related to the long life, not only long life, also intelligent. So this person, Zhang Wenzong, okay, this person, Zhang Wenzong, is a person who is earlier than Confucius. So he already dead, okay, but probably a legendary figure. People constantly in the Confucius, the state of Lu, and probably people constantly talk about Zhang Wenzong is so smart, so intelligent because he knows many things. And Confucius disagree. So Confucius, Zhang Wenzong had a chamber, okay, of for his turtles. Okay, he raised a big turtles, and I don't know how he do it, but and the beam for the house of turtles was painted with mountains, and the post with water plant in order to mimic the turtle's habitat. Okay, so kind of please the turtle. Okay, so Confucius said, he's doing this kind of thing, and what to do be made of his intelligence. He has no intelligence. He just do this kind of superstitious thing or stupid thing. And how can we say he is intelligent or he has his intellect? So that's Confucius' comment on one of the legendary smart person. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Aman. Looks like Aman has to drop off. So, does anybody wish to comment on any of these verses on 16, 17, or 18? James. You're muted, James. Sorry about that.
The engagement might take a long time. In other words, but some people lose their raptness. They lose their attentiveness sometimes when someone talks for too long, or, so in other words, so I think what it's saying about Yanping is that he is able to maintain intercourse. I mean, friendly intercourse, and so it's kind of like I've heard this said negatively. Like some people just do not sort of like hold a conversation for very long. They don't want to have. They don't want to spend the time, perhaps, or they just don't know how to continue rapt attention or continue engagement and respect with someone. And then number 18, I think it's more the question of this guy was a fairly artistic person. He liked to have a elegant pet. A large tortoise is like an elegant pet that walks around the house and is always kind of like a moving piece of art, natural piece of art. And talks about the decorations that he's made to the pillars and beams on the house. And what sort is this wisdom? And I suppose it's artistic, it's visual, it's attention to the visual presentation. I don't know if that fits feng shui, feng shui at all. But yeah, but I like number 17 because it reminds me of someone's criticism, not specifically to me, but to a whole group of people that I heard one time, that these people don't hold their don't stay engaged once they start to talk to someone. And so it's kind of like there's people that are there for a long, for as long as it takes to hold a relationship. And there are people that sort of like want to break out of the relationship as quickly as possible for whatever reason. So, and of course, this comes up at work sometimes. Sometimes you have somebody wants to talk to you, and you get the impression they would like to talk forever instead of doing any work. So yeah, so it's not always a case of that you need to show continuous respect, but that you have to prioritize duties when you're in conversation with others. So the whole question at there, number 17, is problematic, but that is a virtue. The idea of like having a relationship with a loved one,
Yes.
that seems unending. That's a tremendous virtue.
Yeah, I want to come back to this even with the whole idea of what it meant to be a friend in Confucianism in a minute, but I would like to hear from Madeline first, and then we'll hear from Madeline. That's the only person.
Yeah,
So make it very
well-
eloquent and very long.
I'm sure I'll do my best. I was thinking about the tortoise and that there was also a whole other dimension that that the man missed in simply decorating the room, and that is that the tortoise shells were used for divination. I think not in this era, but in a long previous one. And so they were a way of hearing the will of heaven and hearing about what the different deities or animist spirits had to say. And so simply recreating the environment of a living tortoise isn't enough to, and I mean, in a sense, it almost seems to be talking about the pointlessness of ritual in terms of what we'll call sort of living authentic experience of inscribing the turtle bones and turtle shell and heating them up in a fire and seeing what the answers are.
Thank you for that.
Then-
Do you want to comment, please? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about turtle. Okay, so of course I don't know. Okay, what exactly going on, but just based on my understanding, first I don't see it's a pet, right? So basically it's something to use, so it's not a pet. And here he used the Confucius. The text used the words "house a turtle." Okay, so I don't see it's a turtle in a house. I think he built probably a shrine or some chamber, some dog house for the turtle. That's I think. Number two, I probably would guess the turtle probably a dead turtle, probably not a live turtle. It's probably a dead turtle. So probably just only the turtle shell, because I don't see a big turtle and then you can keep alive, and then I don't think so. And the reason I say that is a famous a Zhuangzi story talk about the turtle is 3,000 years old and being put in the temple. Okay, so it's a dead turtle. Okay, but they decorate, they put the beautiful clothes on that, just treat as a spiritual. Okay, as a spirit. And then so I kind of have to guess probably this guy Zhang Wenzong keep a big turtle shell in the shrine or in the temple and decorate as a mountain and the water plant, kind of like please the spirit of the turtle so he can perform his divination more correctly or wisely. So people think it's great. That's just my imagination, but I'm not sure. There's no historical record to support. The only thing I have to think about it is based on the Zhuangzi's description. So I think that's probably the case.
Allison.
I was thinking that at first he's trying really hard to make this little home for this turtle really nice, like giving him, this view of the mountains and, all these things to make him feel at home. But it reminded me of this short story by Rumi about a merchant and a parrot. And he tries to make this really gilded cage for the parrot. And it's all about, like ultimately the parrot escapes because a cage is still a cage. So I don't know, it just made me think of that story. I have no idea if that's what Confucius meant, but it brought that to mind.
I would like to ask a question, like as far as how did Confucius view friendship? You know, that's because I mean, you know, sometimes friendship is kind of categorized, at least with the Greeks, you know, with Aristotle. And is there anything similar to that where he talks about what it actually means to be a friend? I mean, he mentions things in this passage, but friendship seems to be, you know, a very important part of community at the very least. So
When you ask about friendship, because you are talking about the book 517.
yes, yeah. Mhm.
I believe that's not talking about friendship, if specifically on that one, because I see some English translation they consider as 燕平仲 is good in doing friendship after a long time, and he still keep his attitudes respectful. I think more on the because I look at the Chinese word 与人交, I don't see that means friendship. I think here he probably means interact with people. So he's talking about ritual, talking about how, just like, you know, my translation, I would like to translate as the way I interact with my interaction. I have engaged in the conversation with people, and my attitude never changed for a long time. So his long time, I think I read as 20 minutes, 1 hour, instead of 3 years, 10 years. So, so if that's the reason as this question, I don't see that's the reason. And I can try to look at the traditional Chinese interpretation. I think they also consider as
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, that's a two different way of look at it. Some people talk about friend, but some talk about interaction. I look at two books, and then some talk about it's a friend, you know, but some
yeah, talks about intercourse in this.
yeah, intercourse with people. Yeah, so that's a two different way to look at it. Yeah, but I just don't see why people. That's my question. Do you think if you have a friend for a long time, you lose the respect way? This respect, I just don't see. You probably first time I meet you, I call Mr. Joe, Mr. Bullock. But after we get together, I say, hi, Joe, you know, so
Yeah. But I think it's after a while, you don't take people for granted. That's the message. That could be that's my interpretation when I had thought about that. But maybe James can shed some light on this for us.
I think your comment was really good, Joseph. I think, yeah, it comes down to whether or not the relationship has been abused. If you have a fairly pure intention, I compare this to my relationship with my family, you know, so like I always keep that relationship open and try to monitor it, see if these relationships improve. And I think and where you're kind of like not going to pursue that path is as if you feel like there's been too much abuse. If you feel like there's been too much abuse for the context of the relationship. So you know, and it just depends on the particular relationship and the context. But I think what he's talking about specifically in number 17 is that a single interaction. So in a single interaction, whether it's kind of like, well, you know, I'm a little too busy, type of appearance to answer all your questions, or you know, and there's no if there's a genuine engagement or not, you know, and if there's a genuine engagement, then the and it doesn't abuse the situation that that is that the interchange is occurring in, then if the appropriate amount of attention and consideration of the other person is being benevolently attended to. So that's the I think that's the point that's being made here, is if there's no question of harm, there's no question of ill intention, then whether or not the exchange, the communication is free flowing. And this is really important, I think, for people who consider themselves communicators. In other words, if you are someone who is a teacher, someone who is a head of family, parent and so forth, this is the situation where you bear that responsibility more than others to be able to put the cap on the intercourse when it occurs. And that goes for managers, that goes for business as well.
That's a very, very good point. Allison, do you want to expand on that? Thank you for that, James.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that when you know somebody for a long time, you see their flaws. And so that I think that what he's saying is that it's important to still be respectful. But I think when you have a very long lasting friendship, actually, I think the respect grows. I mean, when I think of people that I've known for decades and that I really think are my very good friends, my respect for them has grown from when I first knew them, because I've seen them under so many circumstances and see how beautifully they handle things that, I respect them even more than I did when I first got to know them. But what you were saying about teachers, I think, is completely true, because I think teaching is so much about dealing with very difficult people and finding ways to talk to them in a way that's respectful, even when they're not being remotely respectful to you. And you see that a lot with parents. Sometimes parents are they're very upset about something, and you have to find ways to just handle that. I mean, I one time had a parent yell at me for 20 minutes straight. I could have hung up, but I knew she needed to get her anger out. So I put the phone down. I walked away. I did yoga for 20 minutes. And then once she calmed down, I picked up the phone back up and I said, okay, now this is what we're going to do to, fix this for your child. And she was great. She gave me a little plaque I still have to this day. So, but in many situations with it, where you have to deal with difficult people, you have to find the best way of dealing with it and not taking it personally. But then that's how you really find a solution to help them, because that's really what you're there for at the end, is to help them. So you have to find ways of, handling that. Yeah.
So we have a choice here. To Jason, do you want to try and do the first part of what number would it be? It would be 9. Well, it's 18 for me, but 19. Penny,
Yeah,
actually.
I think probably let's do it next week. So this one is again supposed to be, by the standard version, should be 1, but I believe a lot of translators probably split as 2. So,
Okay, so no, wait.
yeah,
Penny.
It's actually some. I believe some version will have split. Is split as 2 chapters. Okay, so
Yeah, I had a comment on verse 16, when he was talking about the 4 characteristics of a superior man. And I'm not as familiar probably as Jason is, because he's done the translating, but to me, I can't remember, like, when Confucius has given the example of somebody that he thought was like a good example of something. Usually he seems to be critical of people and they're always pointing out their shortcomings. And the fact that he talked about this person and, you know, what great qualities he had, that he thought it was like a teaching moment, that here was an example of somebody. And I was just thinking that to me it was kind of unique, because I didn't remember many times where it seemed like he actually was taking somebody. I mean, he's teaching all the time, but usually he doesn't actually give an example, like when we were talking earlier, you know, in the earlier verses about some of his disciples and his students. You know, he was always kind of critical of them. They weren't, you know, coming up to snuff. And I wondered if that's the case, where he tends not to give real examples of, like, Junzi.
I think he gave the example, right? I think it's unfortunate this way. Okay, I think that's the problem. He assumed he's not writing a book. He's teaching his disciple. So
Right.
when he talk about Zhang Wenzong, he talk about Yan Pingzong, he talk about Gong Yechang, he talk about a lot of people. He assumed, okay, you already know the story, right? So from time to time, I provide the story, but I am 2,500 years after that. So I'm not sure what's exactly the story on. So just opposite than what you think. He probably already provided the story, the example, and he comment on the story. But unfortunately, we lost the example. I think that's the reason, you know.
Okay.
And one thing about we talk about friendship or interaction. Okay, if we interpret as he's talking about friendship, and after for a long time, he still keep the respectful, okay, this kind of attitude. I think here he talk about respectful, just like Edison said, when you have a friend for a long time, you get more respectful to this friend, because that's the reason I keep a long friendship, right? So, but I think that here Confucius' concern, if we interpret as friendship, not the single interaction, a single conversation, I think Confucius' concern probably on the ritual, okay, on the form you are talking about. So as a friend for a long time, if let's say Joe is ranking is higher than me, and I still call him sir, I will not, because being for a long time, I just call hi Joe, you know, I will still keep him sir, and your highness, I will still keep this. I think it's probably what he meant in this way, you know, not in your mind respectful way. I think that's what Confucius meant. Yeah.
That's too formal for me. I will say that. So, and it would be reverse, Jason. It would be reverse. I'd be calling you sir. But maybe actually, if I could briefly. Oh, Amina, go ahead.
I was just gonna mention that it is too formal for me, and coming from Middle Eastern culture, we have that in our culture, that you have to respect, but sometimes it gets to be too much, too formal, too solemn. And I guess it's just the balancing to be able to, and it's just how you greet someone too, you know, how you address someone, your tone of voice, your attitude, it all plays in. It's not just the word that you use or the title, it's just how you say it. Is the overall interaction. So it just gotta.
I agree. Thank you very much for that. And I would actually just like to ask everyone, maybe we have a few minutes extra. What did you're maybe getting out of the, James, go ahead and comment on whatever you would like.
Well, you can finish your question, so since
Yeah,
we're halfway through it.
Yeah, I was going to say just basically what you've gotten out of the Analects up to this point. You know, we're 5 chapters in. I know we ask this question periodically. But be interested in hearing any feedback. But also, again, feel free to comment, Jason, on anything, or James on anything.
Yeah, I had my explanation point up. I wanted to,
Oh.
yeah, I liked Penny's question. I think it's Zhang Chan, Zichan, the number 16, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I see there is both the fact that, Confucius doesn't need to talk about virtue or goodness by referring to himself all the time. So this is a good example of that, of his humility. But it's also the idea that Zichan is a person who can keep several balls up in the air at one time. So that's the amazing thing about that statement, is that he's just trying to explain in this sentence, that not the sentence, but the saying that you can show that you can have several balls up in the air at one time and manage them, all of them, effectively and extensively in your social relationships. So and be humble at the right time, be respectful at the right time, be kind at the right time, and just at the right time. And I'm sorry I don't have your adjectives, Jason, but that's the idea, is that all of these can be completely embodied in a single person. And and I might be out of bounds, but I liked Mina's comment, because it reminds me of a relationship I had with a Pakistani man once at work. And I've been watching these videos kind of by accident of a English speaking YouTuber in Pakistan. And his experience are bringing back sort of this kind of like recollection to me of like what the culture is like. And what I noticed in those videos is there's several times, maybe because of his skin or the fact that he speaks English and has a big camera that follows him around, but there is this kind of like confrontation that happens, which we don't necessarily experience as much in American culture. So the confrontations occur. People tell him, watch out for this, watch out for that. And this might be like caring for the foreigner to a certain extent. But it's also this idea that if you're going to tell me something, or if you're going to be in front of me, I need to match you by showing you that I'm here and I'm caring for these women over here that are looking at you, or I'm concerned. He had a policeman that wanted to asking him where his guard was, and he said, "Well, I don't have a guard. I don't need a guard. Everybody is friendly." And so, but he was just on a 3-day trip, right? So, but the idea is that there is this kind of like concern in some cultures that we don't necessarily have in the American culture, even though there are learning curves wherever you go. I lived in Tennessee for a while, and I was confronted by these learning curves. I met a man who was mentally disabled, and he was angry at me because he didn't like my last name, because he had gone to jail because of somebody that had my last name. Things like that can happen, right? So there's this kind of like And also people that get angry because something that they think is political comes up in a conversation. So they get angry and start, what they do in Tennessee is they drop the guys, they drop their voice about, four or five, four notes about, they drop their voice 4 notes. That's what it was, how you can tell they're angry. So it happens in all kinds of cultures, and of course, when you're a stranger, those are the things you need to, those are the things you need to learn fairly quickly. And so there are these differences in Middle Eastern cultures and different states and so forth.
Yeah, thank you for that, James. Actually, that was awesome. That was a great explanation. Allison.
I was thinking something kind of similar to what James was saying, that I feel like I've really been struck by the similarities between ideas in here and in Greek philosophy, and this concern with the virtue and just concern with how you treat other people. And what I think is kind of interesting is it seems like American philosophy is all about the individual. And what I think is just interesting, like I've noticed this when I travel abroad, is that as soon as you get to an airport and for your flight back to America, while you're waiting for the plane, you can feel the hostility start. I mean, even little things like they're all trying to fight to get to the front, like in these just little ways. I don't know, America's a really angry country. And but sometimes I think it's so interesting how countries reflect their philosophers. And it's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Did the philosopher write the way that they wrote because they're reflecting the society they're living in? Or are philosophers far more, have much more of an effect than we realize? And people act like, what they learned from that. But it's kind of interesting that in the cultures where the philosophy is really about all these little tiny things about how to treat somebody, how to work hard, how to be respectful. You see that in a million ways, just even if you're just there for like a week or two visiting. It's really kind of interesting. Maybe we need to write a new American philosophy book. Be nice
Well, virtue is a good thing to have for sure. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Confucius might be a little bit tough for me. I'm just.
Oh yeah, he's a little like too like.
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous
I like
about
a good
that.
nap once in a while, I don't
I
know.
mean, I've appreciated some of the things, like especially about ritual. But yeah, it can be, yeah, it can be a little bit overkill.
It is. Yeah.
So I am gonna go ahead and announce upcoming events. Thank you, Jason, for your translation as always. It's fantastic. So tomorrow we have a very interesting conversation. It's with Comprehensivist Wednesdays. That's done in conjunction with the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society. And we'll be learning how to measure beliefs. Madeline, I hope you really can come to that, actually, if possible. Because that actually really should be interesting. Tomorrow or Thursday, it kind of pains me to say this, chapter 18 of the Bhagavad Gita. And the reason it pains me to say that is because that is the final chapter. Now it is pretty long, but it is the final chapter. We'll be doing that both Thursday and Friday. I encourage you to come. We have someone named Yogeshwar who's been really quite it's been quite a privilege to be able to listen to him, listen to his wisdom, listen to his interpretation of each of the verses, and he and Shrikant have really been, I'll just say it's been fantastic to be able to attend. So and that is the final chapter. So And then on Saturday, Jason, what will you be doing? Let me see if we've posted this yet.
Yeah, Saturday is this Saturday we're going to conclude the non-dualism for the Hinduism.
Oh, wow. Okay. That should be fun.
Yeah.
Um,
So what's the difference between Thursday Bhagavad Gita and Friday Bhagavad Gita?
what's that?
What's the difference between Thursday's Bhagavad
None.
Gita?
It's just a continuation.
Oh, so you have to attend both to.
No, not really. I mean, you
No, I'm not saying have to. If you don't want to miss anything, you have to do both. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, got you.
yeah.
That's why.
So,
No wonder you move so fast. Before I still can catch up, then I find out you guys move so fast because you have the 2 sections per week.
let's see. Yes. Yes. I actually, you've attended a few of those, right?
Yes, because Thursday, Friday turn out. Friday I may have time. Thursday I was busy, so so.
Oh, well, I encourage everyone to attend as much as possible over the next couple of weeks while we conclude the Bhagavad Gita. It's been really just an amazing journey, So, so those are the upcoming events, and I thank everyone here for attending. Brian, I hope Brian's feeling better from his shot, and give him our best.
I will.
And yes, and thank you everyone. Oh, and when is the recording available? Generally about 3 or 4 days. It's usually even sooner than that. Shrikant usually has it, downloads it tonight. And hopefully he can edit the first 10 minutes so that we're restarting. So but yeah, usually I would look for it the next couple days, and you can find it on our YouTube channel. And if you're a member of 52 Living Ideas on Meetup, you should be able to find this. So,
Okay. Okay.
do you need the YouTube channel? I can look it up.
I appreciate it.
Give me a moment, and I will find that.
Penny, Brian didn't just have he doesn't have pneumonia, he just has a reaction to the shot.
Yes, no, he doesn't have pneumonia. He just had the pneumonia shot, and they told him that, headaches and stuff like that. He'd probably have, some reaction to the vaccination. So he's had a kind of a headache most of the day.
That's good. I mean, it's better than having pneumonia. I had pneumonia once.
Okay. Yeah. Mina, that's if you want to, I'll wait a minute so you can grab the link. But that is our YouTube channel. And actually, if you just search for Analects, you'll see it. And also there are, I don't even know, maybe 1,000 videos up there at this point. So yeah, they're on all different topics. So I encourage you to look at as many as you possibly can.
Okay.
And there'll be a quiz next week. No,
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, thank you,
Kind
everyone.
of startled me when I first joined with all the questions. Says, hey, I didn't remember nothing.
No. We just have to make
I'm
sure.
gonna take a note.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
So thank you. All right. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.